Okay, so in this lesson we'll start to take a look at some of the different light types that are available inside of 3ds Max. Okay, so in this lesson we're really just going to take a few minutes to just sort of get familiar with some of the different light types that we have in 3ds Max, and then in our next lesson we'll start to talk about the process of controlling lights, their colors, and we'll really start to dig deep into the next few lessons. So for now, let's just talk about the process of creating lights, and we'll talk about some of the differences between the different light types. So to create a light inside of 3ds Max, we're going to first go into our Create panel. And if you take a look next where we have Geometry, if you take a look a couple icons over, we have Lights. So let's click on this. We have really two different types of lights inside of 3ds Max. We have a photometric light, and then we have standard lights. Now in this course, we're just going to stick with the standard lights. If you want to learn more about the photometric lights, you can actually take a look at our Introduction to Lighting in 3ds Max course once you've had a chance to finish this course. So let's switch us over to the standard lights, and over here we have a few different light types that we can choose from. So we have a couple of different spotlights, a couple of different direct lights, an omni light, a skylight, and then a couple of specialized mental ray lights. These are the ones that have this MR prefix in front of them. Now when it comes to setting up your lights and dropping them into your scene, I find that it's a little bit more reliable if you actually don't do it in a perspective view. If I press Alt-W on my keyboard, let's actually switch this to a 4-panel layout. There we go. So let's come in here, and as far as which view you want to use, it can really be up to you. Like I said, I would really use one of your orthographic views instead of one of your perspective views. But let's drop in something like an omni light. So once we have our light type selected, now we can come in here and click to add this into our scene. So if I click somewhere up here to sort of drop this light up above our aircraft, as soon as I click once, you can see here's my light source. Now, at this point, I'm still in a light creation mode. So if I click again, it's going to add another light. And if I click again, it's going to add yet another light. Once I have the lights set up and in my scene where I want them, what we should do is just right-click to exit this light creation mode. And now you can see I'm no longer adding lights. I can come in here and select the ones that I want. So once you have, again, your light placed and it's set up, go ahead and right-click to exit that light creation mode. So at this point, because I created these lights in an orthographic view, you can see that they are perfectly aligned on one single plane. So once you have your lights placed and set up sort of roughly where you want them, if you needed to then move them from side to side, you could definitely come in and do that. But I find that again, dropping these in one of your orthographic views, it gives you a little bit more predictable placement than simply coming here and clicking in your perspective view, where you really can't be 100% sure where your light is going to wind up. Now, let's talk about some of these different light types that we have here and sort of break down the differences between these. Okay, so I've set up just a couple of really simple scenes here to just help illustrate what we have here. So the first light type that we have is an omni light. So this will be sort of what I have set up here just for demonstration purposes. Now I've added in sort of this little sphere, these arrows, just to kind of help you see exactly what the light distribution pattern is. So with an omni light, it's sort of like a light bulb or a traditional light source where it's going to emit light out in a 360-degree spherical pattern. So it's going to start from one point and radiate outward in all directions. So again, we're going to get a light distribution pattern sort of like this. Very typical, sort of a standard light bulb type light source. Again, this is the omni light that we're looking at. Now, for something like the skylight, or in my case, I'm actually, the next one I'm going to talk about is going to be this spotlight. So we have a couple of different types of spots. We have a target spot and a free spot. Essentially, they do the exact same thing. The only difference is the target spot has an additional node where you can actually point and aim the spotlight at a very particular source. The free spot doesn't. But the spotlight, really just like the name suggests, it acts just like a focused little cone of light. And again, I've just set up this really simple scene to help you see just what this distribution pattern would look like. Just a couple of really simple arrows just so you can see sort of what we would have here. So this is going to be sort of like a flashlight or, as the name suggests, a spotlight, where we have this very focused little cone of light We can point this spotlight in a particular area if we want to, but this is going to be good for things like car headlights, or things where we just need light focused in sort of a small little area. Again, this would apply to both the target spot and the free spot. Now, let's talk for just a moment about the direct light. Now, this is a little bit different type of light in that it doesn't really emit light from one point in space like the spot or the OmniLight. The direct light would really be something like a sunlight, where by placing one light source in my scene, which you can see here, if you can sort of imagine these little arrows being the direction of your light, it's instead of emitting light from one point in space, it's actually going to illuminate my entire scene. As we can see here, this is all just using one direct light, but this is really going to be sort of like a sunlight, where if you look up at the sky, we have during the daytime one light source, which is the sun, and that light source is infinitely far away. So by dropping in one light source, we can illuminate the entire scene. This is really good for outdoor illumination, or things where by dropping in one light source, we can get very clean, very even illumination. Again, this is going to be really, really good for a lot of situations where outdoor lighting is required, or if we need to achieve very, very even illumination over a really, really large distance. Again, this is the direct light, either the target direct or the free direct. Again, they both do essentially the exact same thing. The only difference is the target direct has an additional control where we can actually pick up an object and move it, and that will control exactly where this light is going to be pointing. The free direct does not have that, so we would actually have to pick this light up and move it around. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of these different light types a little bit later in this course, and if you want to learn more about these in more detail, again, you can actually take a look at our Introduction to Lighting course in 3ds Max once you've had a chance to finish up with this course. Now, the last light type that I want to talk about is this skylight. Now, the skylight works a little bit differently. This is sort of designed to provide surrounding illumination and sort of an all-encompassing kind of ambient illumination. So by dropping in this skylight, it's actually simulating light that's coming in from all different directions. So you can see sort of in this example where we have very, very even illumination. It really doesn't appear as though the illumination is coming from one particular direction, sort of even and coming from all different directions. So this becomes really, really good for, like I said, just sort of secondary illumination, where maybe we're using something like our target direct or a free direct to act as our primary light source, but then we can use this skylight to add sort of secondary illumination and much more natural sort of indirect shadow and indirect lighting effects. And here in the next few lessons, when we actually start to add in lights and other things for our aircraft scene, you'll see where these types of lights can really, really be beneficial. Okay, so that's a quick look at some of the different light types that we have among these standard lights. So, like I said, we're really not going to talk about the photometric lights in this particular course. If you want to learn more about these, you can take a look at our Introduction to Lighting in 3ds Max course. But for now, that's a look at some of the different light types that we have here and how they sort of differ from each other in a very, very foundational way. So in our next lesson, we're going to start to talk about some of the parameters of these lights and how we can start to drop these into our scene and control some of the major attributes for these.